Today is Friday, and you know what that means here on Jimmy Rants. It's Ask Me Anything, so ask away. Click on that little box down there in the corner. It'll take you straight to IGTV for today's episode. JimmyRants.com is the website, and as always, you can engage live in the content. Go follow me. I'm over on Instagram. I am at Living Low Carb Man, LIVINLOWCARBMAN. Once you're there, engage live. We come here Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So be there, be square. We try to always have an engaging show, so we appreciate you being here on Jimmy Rants. We also simulcast live over here on my Facebook page, so thank you guys for being here. We also simulcast over on my YouTube channel. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay over on IGTV, although I will give you a caveat. The Jimmy Rants yesterday that I posted about the Enneagram, I posted it up on IGTV, and it only posted 15 minutes, 23 seconds of yesterday's post. So usually when I post these on IGTV, it shows you the whole thing. So I apologize if somebody went to watch that on replay and it cut off at 15:23. Well, the good news is in the notes, I gave you the link to the YouTube link so you could go watch the whole thing. So I don't know what happened. We're going to see what happens with this episode if they post the whole thing, which is generally about an hour. Most of my episodes are an hour. So if it's anything less than that, then you can definitely go check it out over on YouTube. Type in a keyword Jimmy Rants. You will find the show. And then finally, pop on over to the official website. It is JimmyRants.com. That's where you can see all the past episodes and support my work. A lot of people are like, hey, I love what you do. How can I support you? You can go buy some of my books. So I've authored a bunch of books, Keto, Clarity, Cholesterol, Clarity, all kinds of books. Or you can leave a donation right there on JimmyRants.com. Click on the PayPal link for a one-time donation or the Patreon link if you want to do a monthly donation. And if you're a Patreon, you get special exclusive access to my next week's podcast in video form, the interviews. And so if you're a Patreon right now, you can go watch Ben Azadi. He's a good personal friend of mine from Keto Camp who is doing some really good work. And so that's the Living La Vida Low Carb Show episode. And then on Thursday's episode, I have Dr. Ben Tapper. He's a guy that had a viral video where he testified before his local government about some of the restrictions that they have in place. And he's a fiery dude, really fascinating guy to talk to. So both of those are available to my Patreon subscribers right now. So as soon as you're done with Jimmy Rants, you can go and access those on my Patreon page. As my youngest cat decides to throw up all over my hardwood floor. Really? Like I'm gonna have to wait an hour and let that stuff like harden on my floor? Really, skunk? What kills me is where they like walk a little more and they keep throwing up a little more in the next like 5 feet away. So I guess daddy has nothing left to do, right? The life of a cat owner. JimmyRants.com is the website. And guys, it is Friday. And Friday means ask me anything. And don't ask me anything about my cat because, yeah, it's throw up. And I just noticed I misspelled anything in the pinned comment. Sorry about that, guys. Anyway, you know what today is. It's Ask Me Anything. This is the day you ask any question that you'd like to. I have lots of knowledge about a whole lot of things. So feel free to ask literally anything, but definitely about keto, fasting, cholesterol, book writing, social media, podcasting, video making, entrepreneurialism. I mean, literally the sky's the limit. And then anything you want to ask of me personally. A lot of people have different questions for me, and I dare you to ask me something you think I have never been asked before. So that should be fun. But as we always do, I have a few headlines to go over at the very beginning. Go ahead and get your questions ready down there so when the time comes, we'll have a show to do. Because if you guys don't ask questions, I have no show to do. So Rachel says, my dog aims for the white rug when he pukes. Yes, it's like they always know. And one time I had them throw up inside my Crocs. And so I put my foot right in the Crocs and I feel it squishy and I'm like, ugh. Then I wanted to throw up. So, oh, it's a lovely one too. Thanks, skunk. And now she's over there eating the food that makes her upchuck. First world problems, right? All right, let's get to the headlines. Obesity is now among, in the US, the highest it's ever been. According to a new report released yesterday by the nonprofit group Trust for America's Health, the obesity rate in the United States is at an all-time high. The report states that obesity rates passed 40% for the first time ever. It's now at 42.2%. The report found that the rate of childhood obesity is also on the rise. The latest data shows 19.3% of those from 2 years old to 19 years old are obese. Guys, that's 1 in 5. 2 to 19-year-olds are obese. Obesity comes with serious health consequences, including an increased risk of COVID-19, which is true, but it also comes with a risk of higher inflammation, higher blood sugar, higher chance of having type 2 diabetes, all of those things. So obesity keeps getting worse and worse. And see, here's the thing. We see these headlines almost every year. Obesity getting worse, obesity getting worse. If I'm one of the health officials out there trying to get people to understand the severity of the obesity problem, and obesity keeps getting worse, and then you clearly articulate how you think you fix the problem, and they have, but then obesity keeps getting worse, doesn't that mean that the things they're telling you aren't working, or you're not effectively communicating them that well? The problem is the health officials all say, well, they're just not doing the things we're telling them to do, and that's a bunch of bull. People are obediently cutting their fat. People are obediently eating healthy whole grains. People are obediently eating, a bunch of meals in the day. The problem is they're getting hungry. The problem is they're getting frustrated. And what we need is better options and more options, quite frankly. I think we have such a monolithic view of how people should lose weight that we think it's one way to lose weight. Guess what? Somebody that experienced trauma in their childhood that led them to use food as a coping mechanism and got fat because of that is a far different situation than someone who just casually started eating more and it got in that way, or that someone decides to be more slothful than another person. See, there's so many elements in it that I think we've tackled the obesity epidemic in the wrong way. Do you know 42.2% of the U.S. adult population being obese, and they want to talk about COVID-19 being a pandemic with less than 2% of the population succumbing to this thing? It's disgusting that we don't take obesity more seriously. Now, obesity in and of itself, I don't think is the issue. It's the manifestation of chronic disease around that obesity that is the issue. And that's why we need to stop focusing so intently on obesity. It's a marker, and it's an interesting marker for sure. You need to find out, why are people obese to begin with? What's going on in their bodies that would cause them to be obese? The obesity in and of itself, yes, is considered one of the comorbidities. But generally, obesity is aligned with people who have other disease going on. Inflammation, higher blood sugar, higher insulin, on and on and on, which could manifest as other diseases like heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, PCOS, diabetes, you name it. People could still have obesity and yet every other part of their health be spectacular. And when we announce obesity statistics, but we don't tell people it's not just about your fatness, it's about your healthfulness, we're doing them a great disservice. So I'm not surprised that obesity rates keep going up. What I am surprised about is that we keep sticking our head in the ground, pretending like the solutions, the so-called solutions we've come up with for obesity are working. They very clearly are not. I did a little more of a rant on that than I wanted to, but let's get to the next headline. And this is a really interesting one, you guys. This is actually a study that came out. Looks like my papers are a little bit out of order. There it is. Insufficient sun exposure has become a real health problem. This was published in a major journal, and they basically outlined if you're not getting sun exposure, you can't be healthy. And of course, our whole lives, just like cutting our fat and eating more healthy whole grains and blah, 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 became the norm with our diet, our whole lives we have been told, fear the sun. Don't get out in the sun. You're going to get cancer if you get in the sun. We've all heard that our whole lives. And it turns out that was the worst possible advice they could have given us. Because now we have researchers saying, look, insufficient sun exposure has become a health problem. And what it does is it manifests as an increased risk of all-cause mortality. Every single reason why you would die comes back to people not having enough sun exposure. And we know with COVID-19, they have some of the lowest levels of vitamin D. Well, guess what happens when you stand in the sun? And I do it every day in my backyard. I get big, beautiful sun. I'm completely naked, and I let it hit my full, glorious naked body. And I produce all kinds of vitamin D from that. But most of the people succumbing to COVID-19, they have very low levels of vitamin D. Why? Because they have been made to fear the sun. Also cancers like breast cancer, colorectal cancer, cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, Alzheimer's disease, autism, asthma, allergies, autoimmune diseases like type 1 diabetes, MS, myopia. You can also get skin cancer. But you have to stay in the sun a million years to get skin cancer. Like that's what they've scared us into, thinking you could get skin cancer. But the exposure of the skin to the sun has to be so incredibly long and over a long period of time, repeatedly, for that to even kind of sort of come on the radar screen. And I would argue skin cancer can't happen when you stand in the sun if you are a keto, real food dieter, not eating crappy garbage. I think what happens is that sun hits that skin when you're a carb eater, and it glycates that skin because you've got so much glucose in there, it's literally cooking you from the inside. Now, I don't have any kind of medical knowledge of that. I'm just saying it makes sense to me that when you nourish your body with real food, fats, and proteins, and anecdotally, a lot of people have talked about they never sunburn since they've been eating real food and more of a ketogenic diet. You just don't. And so I think this fear about skin cancer doesn't apply when you eat a real foods-based diet. Melanoma is also a concern. There's also some concerns about the sunscreens that people put on, adverse effects on the eyes. So in their conclusion, most research of the health effects of sun has focused only on the skin cancer. Most other studies that show an inverse relationship between vitamin D status and a lot of diseases have said that there are beneficial effects to exposure to the sun that have been widely attributed just to the vitamin D. However, supplementation studies have shown that vitamin D is not the only thing showing protection. This raises the possibility that having a poor vitamin D status is only a proxy for having insufficient sun exposure, and that you actually need to get sun exposure, not just vitamin D. These are not established, but nitric oxide release from the skin is a strong candidate that merits further research. It's possible sunlight may have direct systemic effects via blood-borne cells. The studies discussed in this paper suggest it would be wise if public health bodies have a better understanding of all the risks and benefits that come from being in the sun. They don't know. Have you ever heard from on high, other than avoid the sun at all costs, anything positive about being in the sun? No, you don't. And yet being in the sun is probably one of the best things. The only thing I've heard this year is sun exposure might help kill off the virus if you have COVID-19. And I wonder, okay, is it that the sun is killing off and burning off the virus? That's how they described it. Or is it the vitamin D that gets boosted, which acts as a hormone in the body, which could be providing some immunoprotective types of benefits to you? See, that's the thing. They never parse any of that kind of stuff out. They just make these proclamations and then, oh, okay, and people just trust it. It's my frustration being someone in this alternative health community. You try to get through to people what the real message is, but so many people are still so trusting of what they hear out there in the media, and they don't want to hear anything else. If you're just joining us, this is Ask Me Anything. I'm going over the headlines I always do on Fridays, where you can ask me anything. And then when the time comes, I will answer your questions. So go ahead and answer or ask your questions for me to answer down there. And we'll get to you guys here in just a moment. The next headline, if you guys heard about this Netflix show that's got all the controversy called Cuties. It's a bunch of 11-year-old girls doing very sexually explicit dancing and grabbing at things, and it's gross. If you've seen some of the clips from this show, it is a Netflix show. Well, a lot of people have decided to boycott Netflix, and it's hurting them bad. Traffic to Netflix's U.S. cancellations page spiked 187% since this came out. According to the company tracking apps, third-party data shows that Netflix subscribers have been canceling their Netflix accounts just because of this issue with Cuties, which came out on September the 9th. The page shows when users have successfully canceled a subscription. The confirmation page had over 35,000 visits on September the 10th. According to the publication, the page has had almost 42,000 visits on September 12th. The numbers are very unusually high, according to a media industry consultant. I think it's driven by this movie Cuties. Otherwise, you'd expect to see other peaks. So do you guys have Netflix? Have you canceled your prescription because of this Cuties movie? It's really disgusting. I mean, it's child porn. And I'm surprised if you know about that and you're okay with that, and you're okay with a company being willing to use little girls like that. I mean, it's gross. Like, I got rid of Netflix many months ago, and I was considering bringing it back because I wanted to watch the Cobra Kai, the Karate Kid kind of series that they've created. I hear that's really good. But now I'm not going to be able to because I'm not going to resubscribe until they get rid of that Cuties movie. And it's disgusting. There are ugly people out there. There are real pedophiles that would just go have a field day watching a movie like that and fantasizing about all kinds of disgusting behavior with these little girls. And to me, what about the parents of those kids in this movie? I mean, I don't want you to be exposed to it, but just trust me when I say they're doing some stuff that I don't think adults should be doing. That's how bad it is. And so I fear for our world if we think that kind of thing is normal and okay. It's not normal. It's not okay. Kids need to be kids. Kids do not need to be objectified and sexualized, and most certainly not endorsed by a big company like Netflix. It's pretty gross. Next one. Do you guys like cashews? Have you ever stopped to think about where cashews come from and what it takes to get it to your to the store? I will admit to you, I love cashews. I can't eat a lot of them because they do have a lot of carbs in them, but they have a ton of fat in them and they're delicious. I haven't had them in a while since I've been carnivore, but when I want a little something, I'm not going to be anal retentive. I do like to have cashews. Well, I found a story, you guys, that shows how these things are made, and it's torture for a lot of these people. This industry in southern India, where they are getting the shelling them and getting the cashew out. There were 17,000 tons consumed in 2016, up 35% from just 4 years prior. They say it's the rise in veganism to play a part. It's in energy bars and nut butters, salads, all kinds of things. Of course, cashew butter and cashew milk. There's all kind of things. I wouldn't just say it's the vegans. I'd say the keto people have been promoting this as well. It's a good source of protein, magnesium, potassium, iron, zinc. But nearly all of them are processed in India or Vietnam. They're difficult to extract. I don't think most people realize how hard it is to get to that beautiful, it's actually a fruit cashew. It's not a nut. It's actually a fruit in the middle. They're difficult to extract, therefore shelled by hand. A cashew has 2 layers of hard shell, between which lie caustic substances, cardol and anacardic acid, that can cause vicious burns. So if you didn't know this about cashews, listen to this, because if you've ever enjoyed cashews, you got to know there are people that are being hurt by this. And of course, it makes sense because plants create compounds as a protective measure. And obviously, these cashews have this cardol and anacardic acid as a protective measure against predators. Burns become a fact of life for 500,000 workers in India's cashew industry. Nearly all of them are women. They're employed without any contracts. They have no guarantee of income, no pension, no holiday pay. Many don't even get to wear gloves. If they did, they probably couldn't afford them. Gloves actually slow down their shelling, and they're paid by the kilo. When the pain becomes unbearable, they need medicine, and of course, they have to pay for that out of pocket. They soothe the acid burns with ash from the fire. So this is real, you guys. If you didn't already know this about cashews, and they've got workers as young as 13 years old working in this industry. They get 200 rupees a day, which is the equivalent of $2.15 euro. Guys, 2.15 euro is something like maybe $2.50 here in America. A day. A day. So it's disgusting. But it's real. And I think you deserve to hear the reality of this. And they say retailers are conscious of the problems that exist and are careful to work with suppliers who provide decent working conditions. Well, that's the thing. Unless they give them the tools, the gloves, give them medication when the burns get to be too much, something, they're paying all out of pocket for basically a couple of bucks a day. Did you know that? And then they sit there and charge you gobs of money. Cashews are some of the most expensive nuts you buy in the store. And again, it's not a nut. It's actually technically a fruit, just like an avocado is a fruit. It's sad. And I think, guys, knowledge is power. When you know about things, you do better. And it makes me glad that I eat carnivore now, so that I don't really feel tempted to eat things like cashews. I still like them. And I'll probably still eat them from time to time. But now with this knowledge, every time I have cashews, I'll think about those poor ladies, 500,000 of them, getting burned just so us Americans can be spoiled with our cashews. It's gross. All right, and the last one, and then we come to you guys for your questions. A company's going to pay someone $500 to taste cheeseburgers. Would you do that? In honor of National Cheeseburger Day today, Bonus Finder has announced it's going to pay $500 for someone to become a professional cheeseburger tester. You will travel all over the United States and you will eat cheeseburgers. To apply, you give your name, email, a written description of why you want to be the ultimate cheeseburger tester. You got to be 21 years old and older, resident of the US or Canada. They said if you're on a diet, this job might not be for you, and you're going to find out why when I describe the job here in a second. You have until September 28th to apply. They will announce the winner on October 8th. According to the announcement, the winning taste tester should judge cheeseburger on 9 different elements. Patty texture. Okay, I can do that one. And texture is everything. Patty seasoning. Okay, again, that would be okay. Bun softness. Can I use my fingers and just... Okay, yeah, it's soft. Bun taste. Ooh, there's where keto people would be knocked out. Complexity of flavors used. relish and or sauce taste, cheese flavor and creaminess, value for the money, and the quality of the ingredients. There have been similar promotions before, but they wanted to make this a competition for fans of cheeseburgers. So that's pretty cool. I would do that if they could let me throw away the bun. Maybe I would eat just a microscopic amount of the bun just so I can give them a feedback on the taste of the bun. But no, give me the bunless burger. And we need a keto version of that. Let's go around to restaurants around the country and let's order something keto off of their menu. Like I can make pretty much any restaurant keto. And some of them are now catering to keto. I know Chipotle has a keto bowl, although full disclosure, I think the Chipotle keto bowl is disgusting and inept. I got hungry an hour after eating it. They put a big old bolus of avocado or of guacamole on top of very lean steak and a bunch of salad greens. They hardly had, I'm trying to remember, did they have cheese on it? It wasn't a bunch. They could have put sour cream on it. They could have put some fattier meats on there. Yeah, they messed up that keto bowl. So if you ever go to Chipotle, don't get the keto bowl. Make your own bowl. And they'll work with you. Trust me, they'll work with you. You get to the line and beans are what kind of beans? No, none. What kind of rice? None. And they're like, oh, you must be one of those keto people. But you can get the fattier meats for that. So Rachel says I make my own keto Chipotle bowl way better. Yeah. Like they could easily, Rachel, put sour cream and guac. Like why just guac? I get it if you're like sensitive to dairy, leave the sour cream off, but they put cheese on it, so it's not a dairy thing. I don't know. All right, guys, so that's all the headlines. Let's get over to the questions that came in ahead of time, and then I'm coming to you, so get ready with your questions. I will be coming to you guys here in just a moment, but let's see what the people's had to say. First question, do you bother with how much protein and or fat that you eat? There's so many opinions out there. Okay, great question. Great ask me anything question. I think if you have a goal in mind to be into nutritional ketosis and you're brand new to it, I think you need to put the focus on getting fat and protein in certain amounts. So generally the percentage to be keto tends to be around 70-75% fat, 20-25% protein. Just basically make carbs negligible, because they will be. And so what that means is eating foods that are a little more on the fattier side. Now, why do you do that? You do that so that your body gets used to burning fat for fuel. Now, will you stay there long term? Probably not. Will you keep being anal retentive about the exact amount of protein and the exact amount of fat that you consume forever and ever? Amen. No. I have actually adjusted my intake and tracking of things to I don't worry about it anymore. Because I don't eat lean meats, and I think you can just become anal retentive about all of it if you overanalyze it. So at the end of the day, once you become keto adapted, pretty much just choose real foods, and you know what's a fatty piece of protein. And so when you have a ribeye steak, you know that's going to be about a 75-25, 70-30 kind of breakdown. If you have a sirloin steak, that's going to be like 60-65, and the rest protein, percent fat and the rest protein. The only ones that could be problematic is if you eat like just the chicken breast, that's all protein. So I guess you do have to add a source of fat with that. Filet mignon is 98% protein, so you would have to put fat with that. So, but I wouldn't worry about it. You kind of generally know, and plus your body will let you know. Pay attention to your satiety signals. Pay attention if your stomach growls an hour after eating that meal. I think that's your telltale sign. Some people do very well increasing their protein, and they enjoy that. Other people don't feel so well doing that, so then they push the fat up a little bit higher, and they feel well doing that. That's the beautiful thing about keto. It's flexible. so that if you want to push a little more high fat or a little more higher on the protein side, you can do that. Now, let's be very clear about terms here. People often mock people that call keto a high fat diet. Even the highest protein diet is still a high fat diet. Nobody's eating 50+% protein in their diet. You're not. When you look at the caloric value of fat, it's 9 calories for each gram of fat. When you look at the caloric content of protein, it's just 4. And carbohydrate, of course, is just 4 as well. So you could have a lot of protein and half the amount of fat, and it's still a high fat diet. So don't think that high fat means you're just having gobs of fat on the plate. It's still going to be high fat. I talked to Ted Naiman about this, and we ran this test where I did a high protein experiment. And I think the highest I got in my protein during that experiment was like 42% of my calories was from protein. And the rest of it was fat. Well, guess what? That's 58% fat. That's still a high fat diet. So people get confused over those terms. Oh my gosh, you're eating high fat. That's horrible. And I'm like, okay, you eat high protein, you're still eating high fat too. So thank you for that question though. Next question, do you feel as though you're being held back from your goals? Me personally, if that's what you're asking, no, all of the goals that I am pursuing, I'm pursuing. And I just wrote a post about this today on social media, by the way. If you have not read it yet, go read it. And it's all about knowing when it's time to let go of things. If it's not meant to be, don't try to force it, basically was the quote that I had in my post. And in the post, I basically wrote about this very topic here, that if you are pursuing a goal and you're progressing towards that goal, then keep progressing. But if you're pursuing a goal and you're trying to make it happen because it's something you want, but you still get further and further away from that goal, it might be time to let go of that goal. I know that's hard for people to wrap their heads around. Well, if I want something, I should go for it. Well, I might want to play in the NBA, but there ain't no way they're going to have a 48-year-old man come and play who I can shoot the ball pretty well. I can rebound and block shots, but I'm not athletic like NBA players would be. And so it's not going to happen. So you just kind of have to know and be realistic about your goals. So for me personally, no, I don't feel as though I'm being held back from any of my goals. And sometimes goals adjust over time, and sometimes you change, kind of the vision of where you're going to go in your life, and that's okay too. And that's where I am in 2020. Everybody likes to ask this question. What did you do before you were a health guy, and how hard was it to make the jump full time? So I was in a lot of different kinds of jobs. I talked about this before on Ask Me Anything, but basically I was in retail jobs. I had a few marketing types of jobs. The job I did right before this was I was in a call center for a pretty major corporation that's here in South Carolina. And I got all of the emails that came in for that company. So anytime somebody complained, I would be the one that would respond back to them in email. A lot of it was cut and paste type of stuff, but I learned how to interact with customers, and through my retail jobs that I did before, I worked in Christian bookstores in the 90s and into the early 2000s. And so I tell people I learned a lot of the skills that I do now in all of those jobs that I had before. I did a little bit of Christian radio in the 90s. But yeah, it was pretty much jumping in feet first. Here we go. Let's do this when it came time to go full time with Living La Vida Low Carb. So I went full time with it starting in 2006. Literally, I had not even started the Living La Vida Low Carb show yet. I had already been out there blogging for about a year and a half at that point, and I knew I wanted to do more. I was starting to get more notoriety. I was starting to have people wanting me to come on their blog and do an interview and da-da-da. I'm like, okay. So I made the decision, let's step away from that job that was very secure, very boring, but very secure, had health insurance and all the rest, and I left it. Will I say it was an easy jump? No, it most certainly was not. But anybody that's seeking to do something where they're chasing a dream and chasing a passion, you have to take risks. And of course, sometimes people are like, well, didn't you want to have a safety net in place in case that didn't work out? Here's my thinking on that. I believed so strongly that I could make something of that I didn't create a safety net. Now, was that foolish? Probably. Did we struggle for a little while financially because of that? Yes. Were there times in the years after that when I probably wanted to give up? I've told this story many times before. Yes, 2009. I almost gave it all up because I made no money for 10 months in a row and it was really hard. But when you have the passion, when you have the stick-to-itiveness, when you know and you pushed your chips all in on yourself and you believe in yourself, you believe in what your gifts and talents are, you don't give up. You don't give up. You adapt. You do what you have to do. That year, 2009, when I almost had to give everything up, cut off cable, shut off cell phone, cutting things down to the bare bones minimum just to survive. And I did survive. And that was 2009. 3 years later, I get my book deal. And now we're 7 years after that, 8 years after that. And I'm a 3-time international best-selling author. And 2020 notwithstanding, it's been a hard year for everybody. But I've been pretty darn successful in my career. But had I not made that initial jump in October of 2006 to go full-time with Living La Vida Low Carb, I never would have started my podcasts. And now that's what a lot of people know me most for, is my podcasts and my books. That wouldn't have happened because I would have given up in 2009. Like, I think back now, all of the risks that I took, and with every risk, guys, people always think about risk, oh, it's going to fail. What if a risk succeeds? And that's what I believed in. I believed in me. My whole life, people didn't believe in me. And for once, I wanted somebody to believe in me. And I always hoped it was my family. Nope. I always hoped it was relationships. Nope. I always hoped it was employers who saw my value that I could offer them. Nope. It was Jimmy Moore. I was it. I was the only one that believed in me. I still am. Some days it feels like the only one that believed in me, because when everybody else falls away, all I got left is me and the good Lord above. That's it. And so it was hard. I will tell you, Joshua, it was very hard. But I can tell you it was the most gratifying thing I've ever done. Being your own boss, calling the shots, making the direction of your life where you want it to go and not where somebody else wants it to go. There ain't nothing better. And there ain't no way I could possibly ever want to do anything else ever again. This is my life. This is my calling. This is what I was born to do, and I'm doing it. And now I get to be on camera every day to see you guys. I get to do podcasts and talk with some of the most extraordinary people in the world. I get to write books. I have notoriety and get to speak around the world. I have a pretty cool life. And I will never, ever regret my decision in October of 2006 to make this my job. Now, I will tell you, when I first went full-time, some people were like, well, wait a minute, wait. What's your job? And at that time, it was, I'm a blogger, podcaster. And I was like, they don't know what that means, because this is 2006, 7. And then I'm like, and then I started writing books. I'm an author. So when you tell people you're an author, okay. What do you write about? And then it kind of gets into it. But I remember when I went to the tax guy the first time, he asked me that question somewhere around 2009, 10 when I hired a guy. And he said, what do you do for a living? I said, author. And he said, okay, yeah, author. Thank you for that question, though. I always love talking about how I got to where I am. Here's the last one. If you were to develop a program for people to get healthy, what would you put up as the cornerstones? Real food. I think if you're going to do a program to be healthy and you don't include real food, you're missing the boat. Real food would definitely be one of those cornerstones. I think another one is evaluating and getting help for emotional and mental distress. I think people have junk in their head that prevents them from being healthy. Be that trauma, be that just instances in their life, be that just not being able to handle the stress that comes on, and then teaching them tools about how to handle that stress and relaxation and meditation and all the things. That would be another one. I would also say incorporating movement that's fun. Like, people hear exercise and some people just recoil as soon as they hear that word. But if you say movement that's fun, nobody's going to recoil from that. And then you start telling them about things they can do that are simple. Everybody thinks you have to jump straight to something really hard when it comes to movement. And no, movement is about starting simple and then progressing at your own rate. Okay? And then the last one is just like the intangibles. Things like red light exposure, things like wearing blue blockers to get good sleep, things like getting out in the sun, all of those things. All of those things are important. So those are good cornerstones. If you're developing a program for people to get healthy, that's the things I would start with. Now, there's plenty of other things that you could bring into the equation, but those are the biggies to me. All right, let's come over here to Instagram first, then over to Facebook, finally over to YouTube. Be sure, give me your questions. This is Ask Me Anything, so ask your questions right down there, and when the time comes, I will be coming to you guys. JimmyRants.com is the website, so thank you for being here today on the show. Keto Lunch says there's been studies coming out that indicate vitamin D deficiency is a huge factor in bad COVID outcomes. Yeah, I was just talking about that, which is why getting that good sun exposure is so critical. And they're finding that it's not just the vitamin D production, but also the sunlight itself causing really good things to happen. So I hope if you're one of those people that just supplements with vitamin D and you never get in the sun, I hope you decide to do both. I take about 10,000 IU of a vitamin D complex. It has all the fat-soluble vitamins. You have to eat plenty of fat with the fat-soluble vitamins so they get absorbed properly. And then get that sun exposure. Like, I can't tell you how important it is that I get out there in the middle of the day. I'm out there several times during the day to get the circadian rhythm light in my eyes. But in the middle of the day, I'm very purposeful. When it's bright sunshine like it is here today, I'm completely naked from head to toe. I'm back there in the backyard chickens. I'm grounding myself in that grass, and it feels so good feeling that energy come up from the ground and then getting that energy from the sun. It just, like, if you need a rejuvenation in the middle of your day, now you can't strip down naked if you're out and about in the real world, but get somewhere where you can get on grass with your bare feet, where you can be in the sun and get that exposure. And it doesn't even have to be long. We're talking maybe 10 minutes, 5-10 minutes, and you could feel such an energizing feeling. Guys, you just don't realize how powerful that big solar thing in the sky is. It's going to help you out. Rachel says we wouldn't have made it this far as a species if our ancestors would have avoided the sun. Exactly, Rachel. We wouldn't have. Joshua says, I'm waiting for Netflix to stop defending cuties. If they keep defending it, I will be canceling. Yeah, I think... I don't know. They must have poured a lot of money into that, because I can't understand. Number one, how did it get past executives that they think it's okay to show 11-year-old girls touching themselves, 11-year-olds mocking a sexual act with each other? I mean, it's gross, guys. I really don't want you to have to go look it up. But if you don't believe me, go look it up. It's everywhere. What they're doing with that film, they should be ashamed of themselves at Netflix. And this is a Netflix show. And I know, I think it was Ted Cruz actually submitted legislation to actually investigate Netflix for child pornography. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. But yeah, they need to just do the right thing and get rid of it. Why they're defending it, no clue at all. Rachel said there should be a stamp on cashews that are ethically manufactured. Unfortunately, most people wouldn't know or care. They don't know or care about most foods they put in their mouth. Sadly, Rachel, that's the problem. Yeah. Holly says, I would sign up for the best ribeye in the country. You and me both, girl. Just go around the country and just eat ribeye steaks. Oh, yeah. Bring it. Yeah, that would be fun. Sign me up. Lisa says, I watched you with Kelly Hogan and went carnivore 4 months ago. I haven't lost much weight. I need to lose about 25 pounds. Should I cut dairy? I'm only carnivore. Any pointers? Well, thank you, Lisa. Sometimes weight loss isn't just about the food you're eating. This is something I've talked about quite a bit in my work in 2020, especially coming back from a 6 month sabbatical away and learning about kind of things like childhood trauma and some other issues. I don't think we give enough credence to the role stress plays in our life, to the role past circumstances that are unresolved play in our life. So I encourage you, think about all the things. Let's assume your diet is immaculate, you're eating carnivore, it's wonderful. I don't know exactly what you're eating in your carnivore. You did say you're having dairy with it. Maybe try cutting out dairy, but I don't think that's necessarily the first thing you should go to. Think about the things in your life that might be exacerbating your stress. Now, of course, 2020 has been the epitome of exacerbation of stress. So that notwithstanding, just be mindful that there are other things involved than the food you're eating. It could just be the stress of 2020. So the fact that you have 25 pounds to lose, but you haven't lost any weight, you didn't gain weight. Most people this year have gained weight because of the stress of COVID and the race relations, the presidential race, and all the other stuff that's going on out there. So if you haven't lost, that means you've actually lost compared to everybody else. So keep the perspective, Lisa. I know it's frustrating because you want to see the pounds go down, but this is an extraordinarily strange year, and not losing weight is actually tantamount to losing weight in 2020. But yeah, definitely cut out the dairy and see how it works for you. Joss wants to know, is salami and dried Spanish meat good for beginner keto? Sure, why not? You don't want to rely on processed meats to be your sole source of nutrition, but I think they can be included within a healthy ketogenic diet, sure. Ketones says, have you heard about stearic acid causing the mitochondria to fuse to increase metabolism and mitochondrial uncoupling to cause the body to burn it off versus making ATP? Please interview Peter at Hyperlipid. I've actually known Peter at Hyperlipid since I started blogging. And he's a really nerdy, wonderful guy. And I've invited him on my podcast. He likes to stay behind his blog. He doesn't go and do public interviews. And so I would love to interview Peter, but to date, he has never responded. Now, as far as what you asked here, I don't have enough biochemical knowledge. I definitely lean on people like Peter and others that can articulate that a lot better. I'm rereading the question here again. Yeah, I just don't know enough about that. But definitely, if you have a specific question, ask Peter. I'm sure he would be delighted to respond to you. The last I checked, he's on Twitter still, so you could probably ask him that question through Twitter. But thank you for your question. Any new Jimmy books on the horizon or latest audiobooks you recommend today, says Richard. Thank you, Richard. So I decided when I came back from sabbatical, and then of course the apocalypse started in mid-March, that I was not going to write a book this year. I'd written a book a year for 7 years in a row. Started with Cholesterol Clarity all the way to Keto Clarity Cookbook last year. 7 years in a row, I wrote a book a year, basically. That was intense. Now, I love writing books. I have a process for writing books. I love that process, and the juices are always flowing with ideas for books. So, to answer your question, I do have ideas for books. I just don't have anything like solid yet. So none on the horizon. I might try to do one in 2021, but I don't know. We don't know what the world's going to be like here in the next few months. Let's kind of see where the world's going. I will tell you that in the publishing space, the ketogenic diet is dead. Any new books about keto, it's a goner. So if I do write a book, my next book will most probably not be about keto. And I would say that if we're looking at future trends in the diet industry, I don't think there's going to be a diet that will be a trend. I think people are finally wisening up and realizing it's not about the diets. It's about embracing the thing that's right for you. And all those diets can encompass that. But people are going to want to try to learn more about real food, how to make their own food, how to grow their food, how to raise chickens, that kind of thing. And then some of these ancillary things like the childhood trauma, which I would love to write a book about, and some other things. Trust me, I have a lot of ideas, probably at least like 8 or 10 book ideas in my head, Richard, but none of them are coming out anytime soon. Trust me, when the time comes, you guys will be the first to know that I'm working on a book, or latest audiobooks you recommend today. I don't listen to a lot of audiobooks. I know you do, Richard. You're always very kind to post on Instagram stories when you're listening to one of my audiobooks and you hear me, moment of clarity quote, Dr. William Davis, when I do Keto Clarity. I've heard when you've done that. So, yeah, just find some topic you're interested in. The main thing for me with audiobooks is it the author? Because if it's not the author, you hear this professional voiceover author, and it's just disgusting. I want to hear the person, if they have a good voice, I want to hear them reading their book. So, you don't usually get that. Caro Mom wants to know, what about to start with fermented dairy and no milk? And Jung cheese, isn't it better for your intestines? GAPS diet. Yeah, I think anything that's going to be fermented to give you that probiotic effect is going to be really good. So if you're going to consume dairy, Caro Mom, I think that's a great option. Keto Court said you should write about your experience with the emotional side. For sure, and I think a childhood trauma book would actually allow me to do that as well. Trust me, I started Jimmy Rants with the purpose of being able to talk about a lot of things that are even outside the realm of nutrition. And in 2020, I've had a whole lot of people try to tell me, stay in your lane. You're talking about things I don't care about. You should only stick to keto and only keto. And I'm like, screw you. I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about because I am not a monolithic thinking kind of guy. If you guys haven't noticed, I think about a lot of things and I have thoughts about a lot of things. And I think that makes you interesting as a human being. How boring would somebody be if all they were was one thing? Now, the thing is, most people know me because, you're the author of Keto Clarity, Okay, fine. Keto Clarity came long after I was born. So it's not the only thing I'm about, and it's still not the only thing I'm about. My second time ordering your book, Keto Clarity, and Amazon misplacing it. Oh, that's crazy, Lucky Stove. I hope they work that out for you. Mrs. LJH, what if you're doing carnivore but are dairy-free? Do I need something else? Dairy-free. Well, just be dairy-free and eat animal foods that aren't dairy. I'm not understanding. Do I need something else? What do you mean something else? What else would you need? You have meat, you have eggs, you have bone broth. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can have on carnivore and not consuming dairy. Cass says, what do you think about exogenous ketones? So many people on here use them. Yeah, I've talked about this one before. I'm going to give the short answer because I gave a long answer on previous Jimmy rants. But the short answer is they're garbage. You don't need exogenous ketones for the average person. You're just basically having expensive urine with beta hydroxybutyrate that spikes for about an hour and a half and then it's gone away. It's better to have a slow and steady endogenous source of ketones. The only exceptions is if you're using the exogenous ketones or the ketone esters for boosting exercise performance. I've seen people use it for that. Boosting brain health, if you have a big exam or big like project that you need like really focused attention, it could give you that. If you had a poor night's sleep or a stressful day and you need something to take the edge off, because when you have stress, it's killing your ketones. So if you consume exogenous ketones, it can give you that boost. So those would be the reasons why you would have exogenous ketones. But pretty much all the stated reasons that these companies that sell it, yeah, screw that. It's not about weight loss, not about any of that stuff. What would you recommend for shakiness? Why are you shaky? If you're hungry, that might make you shake. Eat. If your electrolytes are imbalanced, make sure you're getting salt, potassium, sodium. Like I'm trying to figure out why would you be shaky, but interesting question. Here's another question. Would you say you're an extrovert? What do you think? They really asked me if I'm an extrovert. Really? Yeah, I would say I'm an extrovert because I'm one of those people that I go to a place I've never been before and around people I've never been before, and I can be the life of the party. When I was in high school and I was still being abused, I was not, because being an extrovert actually put a target on my back for my dad to abuse me. But when I went off to college and I no longer had him right on top of me, and I was still fearful even away, and for 15 years I was, but once I went to college, my personality changed. I became more outgoing and more extroverted because I wasn't fearing imminent punch to the face. And so yeah, to this day, very extroverted. You can't come on video every single day like I do and not be somewhat of an extrovert. Now I know I'm not seeing people, but you're there, you're watching me. So yeah, that's a funny question. Are you an extrovert? All right, thank you. Oh, one more came in and then we'll come over to Facebook. Do we need probiotics? As being on carnivore, you can't have dairy. What would you recommend? You could have fermented meats. You could have, I know it's not technically carnivore, but you could still have fermented vegetables, things like sauerkraut, kimchi, and things like that. Don't be so anal retentive about your carnivore that you're not willing to have something that could be beneficial like probiotic foods. Have the probiotic foods. It's going to be helpful. I think that's the lesson here. We need to get away from I'm carnivore, I'm keto, I'm vegan. The diet culture, diet mentality keeps you in a box. And what I'm trying to get people to understand is you don't need to be in a box anymore. What you can do is actually choose the things that work for you from all of those modalities and not worry about labeling it anything. Britarian says, have you and your dad made peace? Well, yeah, because I cut off ties with him. And I've talked about this a lot before too. When the childhood trauma stuff came out and I started talking about it in March, somehow it got back to him that I was talking about it openly. He calls my mom, 12 years and had not called her. He calls my mom out of the blue and says, I think we need to be worried about our son because he's lying about blah, blah, blah. And my mom already knew all the truth. I told her what happened. And so he's denying to this day that he ever laid a hand on me. So just like I talked about the other day, a few weeks ago with the narcissists and the people that are gaslighting, my dad's gaslighting me. He's pretending like what he did to me didn't happen. And I'm not going to be gaslit. I'm going to totally shut him out of my life. And it's unfortunate you have to do that sometimes, but I think it was the right thing to do. All right. Thank you, Instagram. Let's pop over here now to my Facebook page, see what you guys have to say. What's up, Facebook? I love the sun, hate rubbing that junk sunblocker on my body, says Debbie. Yeah, you're not alone. Stopped using it many years ago. And again, if you eat keto, this is anecdotal. I haven't seen any research on it, but anecdotally, a lot of people say that they don't sunburn anymore since they eat keto. And again, I think it's that sun hitting the skin when you are a sugar burner and you've got a lot of glucose, high blood glucose in your system. I think it makes it more susceptible. And we know this from research for this thing called advanced glycation end products, AGEs. And I think the sun interacts with the skin in that way and increases AGEs, and that's what leads to the skin cancer. And so if you don't eat the crappy garbage anymore and you focus on fats and proteins, then you're probably going to be able to handle the sun better and not burn. And remember, the burning is an acute inflammation, so you're not having that anymore. Yogi says Keto Clarity was the first keto book he had. Yeah, a lot of people credit this book for getting them to learn about keto. And I'm glad that was my point when I brought out that book, was that people would at least have a cursory knowledge of keto and then go learn on their own. Melissa says, me and my husband work out together. We're together 24/7. Oh gosh, I'm starting to stress out. Is this the therapy session, Melissa? Come in, my darling. It's going to be okay. Thank you, Facebook. Let's pop over here to YouTube, see what you guys have to say. Woo, look at all them questions. Pretty new to carnivore. The other day, my ketones were at 5.7, says Elise. Have you had readings that high? Yeah, the highest I got was like 6.8, 7.1. I've had high. Don't worry about it. It's not dangerous. Walker 1, yeah, you have been following me since 2008, he says. He says, do you think it's easier for people to live low carb today than in 2007? Yeah. A lot more tools, a lot more support system, a lot more availability of foods that would be keto. I mean, there's so many benefits with all the keto junk and bad advice out there. Do you think many people that start keto from bad advice fail? Well, if they do, Walker, I hope they end up finding people like me, Maria Emmerich, Leanne Vogel, like the different people that are really doing a good job of trying to educate. I'm hopeful that even if they get bad advice, at least it whets their appetite to go learn more. Chris B., I listened to your podcast with Judy Barnes-Baker on vitamin A toxicity. What's your personal opinion on vitamin A? And will you cut out eggs? Well, I need to know if I'm toxic or not. So in that episode, if you missed it, you guys, it was on the Living La Vida Low Carb show this week. She talked about getting too much vitamin A. Now, she took a retinol cream that had A in it, along with all the keto foods that had A in it. So she had to, and she was very bad sick from it. So I think she had a little bit more from that external factor, not food. But no, unless you have symptoms of it, I don't think you need to change anything. Chrissy says, what are your thoughts on people that struggle with sustainability on LCHF? I know people desperately need to improve their metabolic health, but they feel like it's too restrictive. What's restrictive about eating unlimited amounts of meat and non-starchy vegetables and healthy fats? Not sure what the restriction is. I heard a psychiatrist say people need to spend more time in the direct sun to help with depression. Bill, you're right. It helps too. It really does. I saw videos using your logo at a time, I believe you sleeping. I suspect someone doing something using my logo. Oh, a hater trying to victimize. Harpsy, you should see all the people that I have doing nefarious activity behind the scene that I have to deal with on the daily. So thank you for telling me about that, but I'm not surprised. I deal with those kinds of people all the time, and I've done it for 15 years. Thank you for being a positive voice. Thank you. Appreciate that, Shirley. Waiting on my COVID test results. Will nurse feel good? I hope that works out for you. Craig says, how do we combat the false notion that eating animal foods negatively impacts the environment, especially when people like Vice Presidential candidate Kamala Harris are running on this crap? Well, I mean, they don't have proof that animal foods harm the environment. In fact, we see just the opposite. Look up the work of Alan Savory here on YouTube. He does a whole TED Talk all about how sustainability and the environment actually are improved when you add cattle to barren land. So, yeah, it's just misguided. Vadim says, I think you'd make a great psychologist. You have a natural affinity for communication, listening, and analyzing. Have you ever thought about it? Yeah, I mean, I've thought about a lot of fields. And I suppose in hindsight, I was a poli-sci major in college, public policy, master's degree. I guess in hindsight, I would have loved to have had maybe some courses in that. But thank you for that. That's very kind of you. Have you ever tried sheep cheese? No, I have not. I'm trying keto and intermittent fasting. Is it a good idea during this coronavirus pandemic? I wouldn't say it's a good idea. I'd say it's the best idea, Python, of what you can do. Why would it be a bad idea? Especially knowing that people who get COVID-19 and have comorbidities are the ones at greatest risk. Keto's going to fix the comorbidities. Like that's the take-home message here. Craig says, on your deathbed, what non-keto carnivore foods would you be munching on? Will it be Little Debbie snack cakes to make you return to your glory days, or will you be strict to the final days? If I knew I was dying, no. If I knew I was dying, I would have every crappy garbage you could possibly think of. Like at that point, I'm dying. Doesn't matter anymore. So yeah. Walker says, if people want to drive down healthcare, do you think breaking the monopoly on getting lab tests run with a doctor's order would empower patients? Yes, it would, Walker. And actually that has happened somewhat. There are online test ordering places where you can order your own test. You pay out of pocket for it, of course. Some of them you can pay for with health savings account money. But like anylabtestnow.com, privatemdlabs.com. I know there's some other companies that are popping up letting patients run their own tests, but they're uber expensive. If they could somehow fit it within the insurance modality and or get those tests down in price a little bit, I think you get more accessibility. The only problem is when you run your own tests as a layperson, you need someone to interpret those tests, and not everyone has access to that. But yeah, it exists now. Go to one of those websites I just mentioned and you can run your own tests on pretty much anything you want. All right, let's pop back over here. I saw a few things come in after I went to Facebook. Croatian Keto, what books do you recommend for breathing techniques? I know that you know them, I just forgot. Well, the best one that I've seen on breathing techniques is this guy named Wim Hof. Look him up. There's actually this method that he has created over on YouTube. Lots of videos from Wim Hof. I don't have the name of the book right off the top of my head, but yes, breathing is very therapeutic for the body. And again, relaxation for the body. Most people don't even use that in their life. Not nearly enough. Dawn says, totally agree with the sun. Since I've stopped the bad seed oils and went low carb, I've not burned in 2 years. Yeah. Anecdotally, we're seeing a lot of people report that. Alan Savory, Joss. So Joss William Allen, and the last name Savory. It's from the Savory Institute. He did a TED Talk all about cattle being the cure for the environment, not the detriment. Keto Vision says, high ketones on carnivores is normal. Also low blood sugar and losing weight. I've been doing carnivore super clean. My ketones are high. I mean over 3.5 all the time, even after eating. Well, you say high as if it's a bad thing. It just means your body is tapping into stored body fat. So good job. It's not high in a dangerous way. That would not happen until you're around 20 millimole of ketones in the blood. So don't worry about it. No, it sounds like you're doing wonderful. Keep it up. Me and my husband work together. Debbie says, I'm monolithic in what interests me and what I research and share. It is interesting how some people will put one down who has multiple interests, and we do so much research and talk about those interests. I have been multiple times told you don't have a college education, so how do you know anything? I finally got to the place I pretty much put those people out of my life. Debbie, that's the only way you can be. And I have never been one to just be about one thing. Like I really like sports. I think I could be a pretty cool sports broadcaster if I was given an opportunity. I don't know if it would be play-by-play. I don't know what it would be, but I could do that. I'm interested in cultural discussion, so I could be on a panel talking about cultural things. In fact, I used to locally be on a show, a TV show that would air in the afternoons, and they would bring in people local from the community. I'm the town over from this TV station, and I would drive over there, and there would be like 3 of us on a panel, and they would talk about just general stuff in the news. And what do you think? These are people from the community. So I was like the diet health book author from Spartanburg, South Carolina. And so I would give my thoughts about all kinds of things. I could do that. I mean, the sky's the limit. Like when you have a lot of interests, you could do a lot of things. And when you have skills, those skills are transferable. Kind of like when I first started doing talks, I had never given a talk before. And yet I had done a podcast for a few years. So the skill of being behind a microphone and talking into a microphone, kind of like what I'm doing with you guys now, talking to you directly, that's a skill that was transferable for when I started doing talks in person. And what I did was I do what I do here on Jimmy Rants. Yeah, I have basic kind of flow of how the talk's going to go, but I don't have a talk memorized word for word. No, I've got slides, and then I'm like, okay, guys, this is what's going on up here. And we just have the conversation. And sometimes I read the room, and when I'm in the room, I'm able to like adjust. Kind of like you guys throw me a question, and I don't know what you're going to ask. I just talk. And it's fun. It's transferable skills. So yeah, I could literally do all kinds of things in my life, but I kind of like what I get to do here, right now. Guys, we went super long on this Ask Me Anything here today, but I love it. On Fridays, it's the last episode of the week. We should go long sometimes. So thank you so much for all the wonderful questions and interaction here today. But that's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. As always, you can engage live in the content. Go follow me right here. I am on Instagram at Living Low Carb Man, LivinLowCarbMan. Once you're there, engage live. We are here Monday through Friday, so thanks for being here. We also simulcast live over here on my Facebook page, as well as over on my YouTube channel. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. If you missed the live, you can watch it on replay on IGTV, although we're hoping today it gets the whole episode and not just 15 minutes. That's what it did yesterday with the Enneagram one I did, so I apologize if you tried to watch the Enneagram episode and at 15 minutes 23 seconds it just cut it off. So I don't know what happened. That's an Instagram hiccup, I hope, but we're going to try to put this one up on IGTV when this is over. And thank you for all those kind words, you guys, that you're putting down there. Thank you also over on YouTube. We're going to put the replay over there for you guys to enjoy on YouTube. Type in a keyword Jimmy Rants, you will find the show. And then finally, you guys, pop on over to the official website for this show. It's JimmyRants.com. And while you're there, you can see all the past episodes. But most importantly, if you like hearing from me, you like this show, you want to support my work, there's 2 ways you can do that. There's a Patreon link where you can make a monthly donation. And the people that support my Patreon, you get little perks, like being able to access the next week's podcast early. And then a one-time donation through PayPal. Those links, you guys, are at JimmyRants.com. Okay, you guys, have a great weekend, and we will see you again on Monday for more Jimmy Rants. Bye.